Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for August 10th through 16th. This week I read 3 books, I watched 2 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 1 book. First this week we have Heartstrings, which is the follow-up to Morbidly Yours. This is a companion romance novel. In Morbidly Yours we had one cousin who moved to Ireland and ended up living next door to an undertaker, and there ended up being a marriage of convenience trope. In this one we're following another cousin who has also moved to Galway to do a medical program, and a couple of years previously when she first got there she was seeing this guy for about 6 months, but circumstances changed. He ended up getting a record contract, so he ended up having to move to London so he could further his career there, and she didn't want to make a long distance thing work because she's got things from her past that made that seem like that was not a thing that was going to be possible, so they broke up. However, her cousin and her undertaker boyfriend are finally getting married, and now they're both going to be either the best man or the maid of honor for this wedding. So they see each other again for the first time in a couple of years, and damn, they're both still hot. This book is delightful. You see why these people fell out in the first place, why these people should probably be together. You get to see the messy family situations that made all of this possible. And it's just a good time, and there are a few different situations in this book that will just make you giggle a little bit. Or at least they made me giggle, that's for sure. This is a new release that just came out this past week, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen for the third one. I have an idea of who the girl is going to be in the third one, but I don't know what partner she's going to have. However, if it's the person I'm thinking of, she's bisexual, so it could be any type of partner, which would be great. The next book I finished this week is something I've been meaning to read for absolute years, and that's Dark Archives. This is one of those nonfictions that has a very long subtitle, and I can't remember exactly what it was word for word, but it's basically the history and science of anthropodermic bibliopegy, which, if you don't speak enough Latin to figure out what that means, it's books bound in human skin. This one caught my eye because you don't see too many books on this subject just randomly floating through your library, and because when I was a tour guide in Scotland, I'm pretty sure I saw one of these books. However, I got really excited at one point in this book because I knew she was finally going to be talking about Scotland and where the book that I saw came from. However, they weren't actually able to test that book, so we don't know for 100% certainty that the tales about it are true. But I know what I saw with my own 2 eyes. I'm willing to believe. But I don't particularly actually want to test that belief so much that I'll look up and see if they've tested it since the publication of this book about 5 years ago, because I just want to continue to believe, honestly. So as I mentioned, this is about the history and the science and how one actually does this, of using human skin as a bookbinding agent. This is written in a wonderful narrative nonfiction format where we're seeing this librarian go to these different places, check out these different books that have been reported to be made with human skin. More often than not, they're not actually, but some of them in fact are, because there's a process called peptide mass fingerprinting, and it's basically if you could take a very small sliver of the cover, you can actually test it to see if it is human. This one definitely had some interesting stories in it, from books where you're like, okay, but why did you do that and where did you get the skin, to, oh, you actually said that you wanted your skin used for this. Interesting. If any of this has sounded at all interesting to you, I definitely recommend this book. The third book I read with my eyeballs this week was a reread of Red, White, and Royal Blue, which I was hosting over on Pagebound, which I haven't talked a lot about here on this channel, but it's a book platform that's kind of like if Goodreads and Reddit had a baby. It's got a little bit of a retro design. Every single book is its own forum, so you can post in that forum, but there's also a book club forum, so you can post in there with your more general reading thoughts. For example, I made a post in there yesterday about an interesting interaction I had while reading in public. And the site has a unique gamification quality, so you can either get points, which means you level up, or you can go for badges, which is reading certain amounts of certain books on certain lists, which is just so much fun. But in any case, I was kind of due for a reread of this book because I read it twice in 2019 when it came out, but I haven't read it since, so I was like, you know what, it's time. So I actually went through and made detailed notes on every single chapter in this one big thread that you can find on Pagebound if you're interested. There were certain aspects of this book that I had forgotten, mostly because in the interim I actually watched the movie, which does differ quite a bit now that I'm actually thinking about it. Certain characters were amalgamated, certain characters were completely cut out, little things about the plot were definitely changed in the movie, and that's something I kind of have come to expect from movies, so I wasn't mad at it, but going back and actually seeing this source material was definitely interesting. Both of my copies, because yes, I have 2 different signed copies, one I purchased for myself and one my friend Anna actually got me as a present for the first time and only time so far that we met in person, which was so nice of them. But it's my understanding that since since these copies came out, certain references to a certain franchise that we don't like to talk about here have been removed, and I'm wondering if all of them got removed, because if I counted properly, I think there's either 4 or 5 different references to that franchise. However, I always give a pass to the books from the before times, from the before 2020 times, because we didn't all know. There were inklings, but we didn't know the gravity of those inklings. If for some reason you've never heard of this book before, it's about a romance between the first son of the United States and a Prince of England. I guess he's technically the Prince of Wales. I don't understand how their system works, and that's okay. It also has a decent amount of nods to the presidential race from 2016, and this is going, well, what if we did the opposite thing? Not exactly having the alternative candidate be completely this person, because Ellen Claremont is just a badass, and definitely not exactly an insert for anybody. But it also definitely has some nods to some things that still come up in American politics. This was an absolutely delightful rereading experience. As for the shows I watched, if you've been here for a while, you know that I watched some Silent Witness. I watched 6 episodes, or 3 different story arcs, because every story is over 2 episodes. Which now means that I finished the 21st season, and the very last episode of that season, the last speech, felt very end of season to me. So even though I didn't really exactly know where I was just like, oh, I must be finishing a season, and then I look, I'm like, oh yeah, season 22 is next, okay. It's interesting to me how much I will go to bat for certain characters, because we'll have certain characters be like, no, she's wrong, she's clearly wrong, she made a mistake, and I'm like hell she did, of course she didn't make a mistake. And then it's very fun to see her actually prove that she didn't make a mistake. These characters get themselves in all sorts of different situations, and it's just fun to see their lives, honestly. The other show I watched was the first episode of the 19th season of Taskmaster, because we realized, hey, that season's been out for like at least a couple of months now, and we completely forgot to go and watch it, so now we can watch it at our leisure before Chad goes away on a trip. This is the first season that has an American contestant, and they've already schooled him on different vocabulary things so far, even just in the first episode, even with the first time he opened his mouth on the stage, which was hilarious to me. Especially because he seems like a really cool dude and he just takes it in stride. It's very fun. If you've never heard of Taskmaster, it's about 5 different comedians that get together and are given different tasks to do, and they are kind of graded on who did the task best. And at the end, if you get the most points, you get a prize. It's a format that I endlessly love, and some of the tasks are just ridiculous. As for the movie we watched, if you watched my last few episodes, you can probably figure out what it was, because we've been building up to it for a few weeks, and that's Jurassic World Rebirth. And what a rebirth it was, because it's the 7th movie in this franchise, and none of the original characters from any of the previous trilogies are in this one. One of them is mentioned by name quite briefly, but other than that, no. I did make kind of a glib prediction that, you know, the dinosaurs would be in space by this one, and we didn't quite get there. They are living in a time where dinosaurs kind of roam freely, but there's only so much of the Earth that dinosaurs actually want to be on because of climate change and their ability to adapt to the world as it is. And we find these people who need to get the DNA from 3 different dinosaurs so they can do something with it pharmaceutically, and this was fine. This is one of those movies where you're like, did this really need to get made? Because you don't really have the nostalgia of any of the characters that you really know, and you just know it's going to be, hey, you should probably not go and touch the dinosaurs. Hey, we're gonna go touch the dinosaurs. It should be fine, and then it's definitely not fine. So, you know, if you're fine with that format and that's something you look forward to and you don't really care about the characters, sure, watch it. That's fine. As for the audiobook I listened to this week, I listened to the very first YA novel ever, ? And that's The Outsiders. This was actually written by the author when she was 16, and I believe it was published in the 60s, and it's about this group of guys who are friends, they're greasers, they don't get along with the socias or the socials in town, and this is all working up to a rumble situation. Because of the terminology of the time frame, this felt very West Side Story to me. And we have these characters living in hard situations. Our main character is named Pony Boy. He's got 2 older brothers, one of them who is kind of a hard ass on him because he's his legal guardian because both their parents died. And when he doesn't make it home on time one night, they fight, he goes out, things go badly, he ends up having to run from the law. I can see why this is a classic that is endured. I can also see why some people have read some homosexual tendency into it. The author was really blunt about it and came out was like, none of that is in here, you can't read it that way, which I'm just like, it's not yours after it's published, actually. Which is one of the reasons I put off reading it, because really the first thing I knew about it was the fact that the author was kind of being homophobic and being like, you can't read the characters that way. But I did eventually get around to it, and it was enjoyable. Certainly not the best thing I've ever read, but the quality of the writing was definitely there. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!